Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to session 3 of Wldfyr's webinar series, Data-Driven Design, How to Use Market Research to Boost Your Brand. We are beyond excited that you've chosen to spend your lunch break with us. So hopefully you've got a snack handy because today's topic is going to be both food for thought and fuel for your brand. For those of you who I have not met yet, my name is Shannon Carter. I am a project manager with Wldfyr. And if you're not familiar with Wldfyr yet, we are a full-service branding agency. From your brand's first spark of inspiration to the roaring fire of establishment, we guide brands through every stage of the journey. No matter which industry, we love to dive into different organizations and set their stories ablaze. While we get settled in, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Like I had said, feel free to drop your LinkedIn profile if you're up for networking with your fellow brand builders. And don't be shy about questions or comments. We've saved time at the end for Q&A, but you can also throw your thoughts in the chat or the Q&A box that's dedicated for question and answers as we go along. So without further ado, let me move on to the slides. After our introductions, we are going to roll into harnessing the power of market research to craft compelling thought leadership. Use data to test and refine your brand positioning. And then we're going to talk about stop guessing and start growing, and then have our question and answer session. So now let's get to the good stuff. First up, I'm thrilled to introduce David Schneer, the owner and founder of Merrill Research. David's been helping brands launch new products and sharpen their messaging for over 3 decades, using a unique blend of behavioral science and nonverbal intelligence. He can read the room in ways most of us can't, decoding the subtle cues that show what consumers really want, body language and AI included. Plus, as CEO of the Merrill Institute for Nonverbal Intelligence, he's passing those skills on to others. Truly, there's no one quite like David in the world of qualitative research. David also just wrapped the publication of his first book titled Black Backbone. Welcome, David. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that illustrious introduction.
My pleasure. And next up, we have Angela Birch, the Executive Vice President and backbone of Merrill Research. Angela has been with Merrill since 2000, bringing decades of quantitative experience and expertise and focus group insights to clients like Chemical Bank and NYNEX. She has been a driving force behind the research that keeps brands on point, and her extensive background in market analysis makes her a powerhouse in the industry. She also has the coolest glasses collection I've ever seen. Angela, welcome.
Thank you, Shannon, for that. I'm looking forward to the discussion. I've got a big collection because I lose them daily. So
I love that.
Gotta stash them.
And last but certainly not least, let me introduce you to the fire starter herself, Ashley Muir. As the founder of Wldfyr, Ashley's a master of all things branding, strategic planning, and yes, even kerning, because design is in the details after all. With a background that spans typefaces for global brands to partnerships with IP attorney Catherine Cavella, Ashley's a creative force who's brought some of the most exciting brands to life. She'll be joining today's session, but don't miss her again in 2 weeks when Catherine will join us for the final session in this series. So without further ado, Ashley, the floor is yours. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us for Data-Driven Design. Let's set this session on fire.
Thank you so much, Shannon. Really, no one does that better than you. Hi there, I'm Ashley Muir for the familiar faces. And for those who are new, I'm the principal and founder of Wldfyr, a branding agency located in the Philly metro area. To share a little bit about my background, I started the business as Intellitivity in 2013. I cultivated my design skills at the University of the Arts in Philadelphia and began my career designing typefaces for brands like Merrill Shoes, Giant Bikes, Microsoft, and Disney. After 6 years, I decided I wanted to do more with my career and decided to start working on growing my network and my portfolio by volunteering at a local nonprofit. I then became the youngest member appointed to the board of that nonprofit, and my success refining the brand and growing the membership ultimately led me to launching my own business. In 2023, to mark our 10-year anniversary, Intellitivity was renamed and rebranded as Wldfyr in order to represent all the branding capabilities we have, as well as the talent we added to the team, including forging partnerships with like-minded individuals like David and Angela at Merrill Research. Today, we've contributed to the design and development of over 50 brands nationwide. So today, we'll explore how market research can fuel thought leadership, making it not just insightful, but also truly compelling. We'll discuss different types of market research, how it can be used to validate your ideas, uncover hidden challenges, and identify trends that are shaping your industry. And we'll also walk you through a comprehensive 9-step strategy to help you start crafting content that your audience won't just consume, but truly will engage with. Then we'll provide actionable strategies to help C-suite professionals like you assess, test, and improve your brand's market positioning using market research as a tool to measure the top 5 brand positioning key performance indicators, or KPIs. Okay, so what is market research? Market research is divided into 2 groups. Primary research, which is the original data collected firsthand through surveys, interviews, focus groups, etc. And then also secondary research, data that already exists, including reports, studies, and published materials such as industry reports, competitive research, and academic studies. By blending both types, we can extract valuable insights to shape thought leadership that aligns with what the market cares about most and determine your brand's position in the marketplace.
Ashley, this is correct, and you've done a good job at bifurcating the 2 types of research. Let me give you an idea of how we view research. And generally, we like to start to talk about secondary research first. And secondary research is information that exists in the public domain. Every time you open up the New York Times or Wall Street Journal, you walk into a library, you do a Google search. If it's out there, it's in the public domain. That's secondary research. That's also sometimes referred to as desk research. And that's the first best step you should do in trying to solve any problem, because that information already exists. Therefore, most of the time it's free. Then there's primary research. And primary research is the research that companies hire us to do that is not out on the public market. It's primary and it's custom research, and it's designed to get information that does not exist out there. And there's 2 types of primary research. There's qualitative research, which is what you mentioned with focus groups, also includes dyads, triads, in-depth interviews. What we're doing now could be, virtual focus group. That's qualitative research. That's what I've been doing since I co-founded Merrill Research. The other part of primary research is quantitative research. And quantitative research is designed for statistical reliability and designed to really get a solid decision-making data that you can take to the bank. Qualitative research is really more about depth of information and understanding, but quantitative research, where Angela manages all of our online studies, telephone studies sometimes, but that's how we look at the research world. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you, David, for adding that clarity, because I think it's really important to understand kind of how market research is conducted, to understand how you're going to be able to leverage it to really create a unique conversation with your audience.
Correct. And implied in that is there are choices to make here, right? Whether you want to do qualitative or quantitative or both, or you want to do one before the other. So you have to match the methodology with the objectives.
Excellent. Excellent. So in the market today, content is queen. And as AI continues to contribute to the endless sea of information, it can be a challenge to determine your unique voice in the marketplace. Access to custom market research can help you create profoundly resonant content that your customers find innately share-worthy. So the first section of this webinar is all about harnessing the power of market research to craft compelling thought leadership content, an area where Merrill Research and Wldfyr have partnered together for different clients. So what makes compelling thought leadership content? Creating thought leadership content isn't just about pushing out information. It's about offering unique insights that solve problems, answer burning questions, and engage your target audience. So let's break down the key elements of compelling thought leadership. 1, answer a question your audience is seeking. To be relevant, you must address a specific challenge or curiosity your audience has. This is where market research helps you to understand what those questions are. Second, you're going to want to offer unique and original insights. Thought leadership content that rehashes common knowledge doesn't stand out. Market research allows you to pull out unique trends, pain points, or innovations that others haven't yet addressed. Third, be clear and engaging. Even the best insights can fall flat if the delivery is not engaging. Structure your content clearly, use storytelling, and incorporate visuals or data to keep your audience's attention. So how does market research power thought leadership? And there are 3 different ways that this can happen, although I'm sure there are others. The first is to validate observations and hypotheses. Now, you may have ideas or beliefs about your industry, but before presenting them as facts, you can leverage market research to either validate or negate these insights. It prevents you from building content on assumptions and ensures that what you're sharing is grounded in data. It also helps relieve analysis paralysis, which is where you have this really great idea and you want to deliver it to your audience and start a conversation around that idea, but you're not really quite sure that it's true. So you put it on the back burner and you table it and you never have that conversation, and that might cause you to lose that opportunity. Market research allows you to be sure that this is also a conversation that your target audience really wants to have. Second is to uncover hidden challenges and eliminate blind spots. Market research often reveals patterns, gaps, and hidden challenges within your target market that even your ideal customer might not be fully aware of. Are you able to share with your audience that the problem they're experiencing isn't unique, or get them curious about facts that have yet to be uncovered? Bringing these to light shows that you're not only in tune with the market's current state, but you're also looking ahead to anticipate challenges. Third is to identify trends among your core audience. By analyzing patterns and behaviors over time, market research helps you spot emerging trends. Thought leadership that speaks to these trends demonstrates your foresight and solidifies your role as a forward-thinking leader in your space. So David, I know that you've had familiarity with, helping clients do some of these things, either validate certain observations that they have about their audience, or uncover hidden challenges. Is there a specific instance that comes to mind?
Yeah, we had a client that wanted to understand what women in the U.S. needed with regard to medical care and what they wanted. And I think Angela was the one that sort of devised that study. So Angela, can you walk us through that?
Sure. I think there's a slide in the deck, or a couple slides about this, if you want me to jump in and maybe talk about a few case studies that we've done.
Yeah, or you should just touch on it briefly and we could always, do a more in-depth when we get to the slides.
Okay, yes. So we've done several studies where people wanted to establish themselves as thought leaders or bring their cause to the forefront. This one study David's talking about was a nonprofit women's healthcare organization, and they wanted to put issues that were pertinent to women, bring it to the forefront right before the presidential election in 2020. So we put together a study that was representative of the population of women by age and different demographics. And they used that research to include that content in publications like Forbes, so that people were more aware of, when you're evaluating a candidate at whatever level, to make sure that they're representing the needs and the concerns of women in the United States. So I think that's the study you're alluding to, David, and we can get to the other ones later, perhaps.
Yeah, the other one is segmentation research. And, segmentation research is likely one of the most strategic things a company will do. Used to be that doing a segmentation research, and I'll define that in a minute, used to be that these things cost $500,000 to do back in the day, involving thousands and thousands of interviews. These days, that's not the case. However, what segmentation is sort of the art of further defining your customer base. Are your customers all the same? Are they all homogeneous, or do your customers fall out into naturally occurring segments that you can identify and track? And these segments, make up the total pie of your customer population. And when you do this type of research, it allows you to look at the unique characteristics of certain populations within your customer base, and it allows you to understand how big that segment is. Does it matter? Can you reach them? And are they amenable to your communication? So it's a really strategic piece of research. It really helps to define a company's customer base. And we find that customers differ, that there isn't just one typical customer.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, so that leads us right into the 9-step strategy to craft thought leadership content using market research. So the first step in this comprehensive strategy is define your target audience. And as David communicated, sometimes identifying your ideal customer profile is more difficult because your customers are harder to reach, or it's really tough to get feedback from them. So doing market research to help in this process will help you define what their similarities are, what their differences are. And based on your company, you may have segments of the market that are different, with different values that you need to target to reach your revenue or sales goals. I like to use the example of Invisalign because we have a partner that really helped, do a lot of their social content. And in devising that strategy, they really needed to target the individuals who are wearing the Invisalign, right? The teens, the individuals who are like normally would get braces, but they would want them to get Invisalign, and convince them that this was like a cool thing. But then they had to also get buy-in from the parents. So they had two distinct segments that they needed to find out more information from in order to figure out how to market to each one of those segments. So next, you're going to want to identify what your target audience cares about. Suppose you have a large audience or an audience that is difficult to reach. In this case, you might ask a market research professional to help gather information at this phase to inform your strategy. The key to success is to determine what your target audience cares about intersects with your brand promise. That's really the sweet spot. And if you can identify that, it really goes a long way to ensuring your messaging is really resonant with your target audience, but is also going to help you achieve your goals. Step 3, get scientific. So when it comes to market research, when it comes to advertising, right, there's a lot of guessing going on. Being able to do market research allows you to make decisions based on data. So you're going to want to build an objective and determine your hypothesis. What have you observed about your target audience and what they care about? Determine what you are setting out to prove with the study. Creating an objective and a hypothesis for the market research will ensure that your outcome creates the clarity you and your audience are looking for.
Ashley, can I add a note about the science part of scientific?
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of misinformation out there about research and what it needs to be. Essentially, research needs to be two things. It needs to be reliable, it needs to be valid. And those are two distinct things. Reliability has to do with repeatability. That is, you do a study in a point in time, you get the results, you do it again at a later point in time, you get the same results or different results, but it's repeatability, it's predictability. The other side of that coin is validity. And that has to do with, are you talking to the right people and asking them the right questions? So those two things have to happen in order for research to be effective. And a really good way to understand reliability and validity is the use of the clock. All right. You can have a clock that is consistently and repeatedly 5 minutes fast, and it can be reliable, right? But of course, it's not the right time. It's invalid. So that's an example of something being repeatable but invalid, is a clock that's constantly 5 minutes fast. So got to be careful about that. Now, with qualitative research, validity is super important, but repeatability and predictability are not important. Again, with qualitative research, a small number of interviews for depth of information. So wanted to make sure we understood that.
Excellent. So what are some key factors that you look at in terms of making sure that a study is valid, David?
Well, when we do quantitative research, like large scale studies, before we actually do those studies, we will do some upfront qualitative research, and it'll either be in a focus group environment, it'll be oftentimes a virtual environment like this, an in-depth interview. But what we'll do is we'll take potential targets and we'll talk to them in their own language, and we'll ask them what's important, and we'll do enough of that so that when we go out into the much more statistically reliable and oftentimes more expensive phase of quantitative research, we actually know what we want to ask.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, that's the power of qualitative research, is making sure that you're A, talking to the right people, B, asking them the right questions.
Excellent. Thanks, David. So step 4 is to define your respondent group. So using your objective and hypothesis as a basis, you want to determine who the ideal targets are for your study. If you're looking to provide your target audience with information about how they or others like them feel or behave, your target audience and your respondent group might be the same. Alternatively, you may want to provide insights on how individuals in other companies or industries feel or behave. And in this case, your respondent group might be different. So David, why don't you give me some insights into, like, how do you determine the appropriate respondent group for your clients?
Well, it really depends on the client's needs, and oftentimes clients come to us, they don't know who their target audience is. They're trying to determine who their target audience is. And so we go through a process long before we do the research and long before we give them a proposal. We actually go through the process of forcing them to identify their target audience in terms of vertical markets you want to hit, in terms of title, seniority, in terms of technical respondents. There's a whole host of respondent specifications that we discuss long before we go into a study. So by the time we get into the study, we have a pretty good idea that we're talking to the right people, until, of course, we get into the study and realize that sometimes we're not. And of course, that's information too, right?
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So step five is to generate questions. Once your respondent group is determined, you want to again use your objective and hypothesis as a basis to build a group of questions that provides the most accurate portrait for your target audience. At Merrill Research, this is a collaborative process where they work with clients to determine key questions that will drive the conversation and then build out the rest.
Yeah, that's a iterative process, Ashley, and it actually is something that really requires a lot of thought, a lot of experience, and it's not just about what questions you ask, but how you ask them, when you ask them, what kinds of questions do you ask? Are they open-ended or are they closed-ended? And we're using all sorts of technology now to help us, uh, you know, generate the right questions. But oftentimes what happens is the client just says, here's what we need to know. And then we go off and tell them what questions to ask in order to get that information. But it's very critical that you get this right, especially in a segmentation study, where later on you're going to be using the results of that segmentation study to create algorithms to go off and reach certain segments, right? So yeah, it's very important, important process.
Yeah, excellent.
David, I would add to that, just to go back to what that fourth point was about, who you're targeting and developing the questionnaire. What's really critical, especially now, the past 3 years, we've seen a high increase in bad actors completing surveys, either through bots or data farms. And it's become increasingly important to develop, number one, when you target your respondents, to find someone, a real reliable partner that you vetted, and that provides good quality data that has come through time and time again, and that has implemented a lot of safeguards in developing their panel or outreaching to find respondents. And you've got to lean on them, but also on the researcher side. Not only do we have to vet our vendors, when we develop that questionnaire, we have to put a multitude of what we call red herring questions in there to figure out if people are bad actors in the research. If it's a bot, are they paying attention? For this question, please select option B. And if they're racing through it and they don't select option B, we can flag them or kick them out of the research. So I feel that the questionnaire has become increasingly important to get high quality data. And we're using that questionnaire more and more for that. So it's really important when you work with a research partner that they're doing that.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Angela. So step 6 is to gather relevant data, right? This is where you're actually conducting the research. And so you're going to want to partner with an expert to conduct both primary and secondary research, use surveys, interviews, and online data to not only gather this information, but also clarify the information. And then you're going to want to make sure that you dig into specific areas. Like David mentioned, right? This process is iterative. So you may get results from the first part of your research and find out, hey, we need to modify a little bit here to ensure we get the answers that we want. And dig into specific areas that your audience needs guidance. So step 7 is to analyze and synthesize the insights. So once you have the data, you're going to want to review it and look for patterns or surprising insights. When you work with Merrill, they present that document to you and your team so that you can go over the insights together and gather feedback.
And that's how we came to meet the folks at Wldfyr. We put together a report for a company called Cybersheath, and they again wanted to be thought leaders in the industry. And they took what was, we put together a solid PowerPoint, but in no way as persuasive as it was when Wldfyr got their hands on it and turned it into something super impressive that has been downloaded so many times and shown at industry conferences and allowed them to have a lot of PR presence. So that was really, really, really critical to work with a company like Wldfyr to communicate those findings as effectively and persuasively as possible.
And you
Thank you.
actually understand research and know how to use it, right? So a lot of companies don't. They're not familiar with research. They don't understand what it can do and how powerful it can be when it's done right. So it's a real team effort, and the client absolutely believes in it as well. So that just makes it even more useful.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, it's important to make sure that you partner with the right person to ensure, right, those data points don't get misconstrued or lost. So step 8, creating a unique angle. And just as Meryl said, this is where we kind of come into play. So now that you have your insights, it's time to get creative. Review your findings and think about how to frame them in a way that is fresh and original. Can you propose a new solution to an old problem? Can you connect to emerging trends that others haven't yet linked? How do these insights connect with what your audience cares about, right? Try to figure out how you can get this data right in front of your audience in a way that they're really going to be able to understand it. And then 9 is storytelling and visual graphics. So wrap your insights in a narrative that your audience can follow. Use storytelling, clear structures, visual graphics. Make sure there's a takeaway, something your audience can immediately apply. Get maximum engagement from your insights by turning them into a gated resource to generate leads like Cybersheath, or build a webinar around it and invite your audience to discover these new insights with you. Some people even turn these into proposals that they send out to conferences and, lead seminars or lead keynotes. Creating a press release or building engaging social content strategy that you drip the insights out over time are all different ways you can leverage market research to connect with your audience. So now I'm going to turn it over to Meryl so they can walk you through a couple case studies of where they did this for clients that were looking to be category leaders in their industry.
David, do you want me to go through these quickly?
Please.
Okay. So I already alluded to the study that we did with Manat Health and TIA, and it was about putting these women's issues to the forefront. And some of the more interesting findings that came from this were that like 1 in 4 women had exited the workforce or considering to do so because they have to attend to their families at the expense of their careers. And that can either be children or taking care of a older family member. This got a lot of exposure for them and hopefully brought some attention to this when people went to the polls to vote.
As seen in Forbes magazine.
Yes.
Got extensive coverage there, which is great. It really helps amplify the message as well.
Absolutely. When you bring compelling thought leadership content to the table, right? Forbes wants that information because they're not going to pay to do these segmented studies, but they want to reach this audience too. So when they see, something that's really compelling to them, they're more likely to publish it.
Agreed. Okay, and this is the study that I was just mentioning that we worked with Wldfyr for Cybersheath, a security company. So they help companies become compliant with the Department of Defense. If you're a contractor, you need to have compliance and you need to be audited. So we did an extensive study with them among the defense industrial base to find out how compliant they were. Turns out people think that they are very compliant and they know what's going, that they're not subject to scrutiny or possible legal action. And when in fact they are, are not compliant and haven't taken those steps. So Cybersheath was able to communicate to the audience of people that are prime and subcontractors so that they realized, what their vulnerabilities were and what they need to do to be compliant. And you can see that's our client, Eric, and that got CNN coverage with an interview with our client, Eric. So
He's a
they've got a
CEO.
lot of CEO, sorry, yes.
CEO of Cybersheath.
Yeah. And this is a tracker study, which is something else that we do a lot of. We started it in 2022, and we're doing it every year, and they're using this as a big communications piece for their annual conference. So they got a lot of leverage from this study.
Yeah, so this study was, a first of its kind, and the fact that they're doing it year over year is really identifying trends in the marketplace and showing, hey, are we improving? Are we getting close to CMMC compliance, or are we getting further away? And being able to have those conversations and raise awareness has really been amazing for their brand.
And this is another study. This is with a company that specializes in AI fall detection devices. They're putting them in everything from independent living to full nursing homes or skilled nursing facilities to try to reduce the number of folks that are falling in homes and ultimately ending up, severely deteriorating their quality of life. So they want it to come out as the company that knew what was going on in the homes, what was going on with falls, and that they were AI leader. They've done this once, but we've done, and they presented that again at another big, forget the name of the conference, Augmentum, I believe. They presented the findings there, and they continue to leverage this research that we did a couple of years ago in other conferences and in other pieces of collateral that they use. And we're currently actually working on another project with them right now to dig a little bit deeper on what's going on in care communities and how people are making decisions to buy this type of technology.
Excellent. So the second section of this presentation will focus on how to use data to test and refine your brand positioning, which is a little bit different than, the first segment, but also extremely important. So as a branding and professional, I can attest to many a client using their peers as their own market research group. The challenge with this approach is that even if your peers just happen to be in your target market, which they're usually not, and are being 100% honest with you, which they're usually not, the feedback you're getting isn't coming from the part of the brain that we use to make buying decisions. And you aren't typically getting enough feedback to add up to a legitimate sample size, rendering all of that feedback useless. In this next section, we're going to talk about brand positioning and how to leverage market research to determine your brand position, find out if your brand is working, and identify opportunities in the marketplace. So what is brand positioning? Brand positioning is the strategy of defining how your brand is perceived in the minds of your target audience compared to your competitors. It's about identifying and communicating your brand's unique value and how it addresses your customers' needs better than the alternatives. So the three key components of brand positioning are target audience, the specific group of customers your brand is aiming to reach. Understanding their needs, values, and behaviors is essential to positioning your brand in a way that resonates with them. Brand promise. This is the unique benefit or value your brand offers to customers and what sets you apart from competitors and meets those needs. It answers the question, what deep need in the marketplace does your company solve? And then finally, competitive differentiation, what sets your brand apart in the marketplace. This involves defining what makes you different and ensuring your brand is consistently showing up this way. Effective brand positioning creates a cult-like following, ensures brand recognition, manages client expectations, and solidifies your position in the marketplace. So here are some key performance indicators, KPIs, of good brand positioning. So to measure whether your brand positioning is working, we need to look at specific KPIs, and here are 4 critical ones. Brand awareness, the extent to which your customers are familiar with your brand. A strong positioning strategy ensures that your brand is top of mind in your industry. Brand perception. This measures how your target audience views your brand. It includes associations, feelings, attributes, and attributes that customers connect with your brand. Is your brand perceived as innovative, trustworthy, high quality, or is it not? Customer loyalty. Good positioning leads to customer retention and brand loyalty. Are customers returning and continuing to choose your brand over competitors? Market share. This includes how much of your target market your brand controls. Effective positioning should help your brand capture and grow its market share over time. Brand equity. Brand equity reflects the value of your brand based on customer perceptions, loyalty, and awareness. Strong positioning leads to higher perceived brand value, allowing you to command premium pricing and build long-term relationships with your customers. Things like native deodorant, where you're paying $12 for a stick of deodorant versus, the leading market brand. That's really a good representative of strong brand positioning. You think back when coffee used to cost $1.10, right? And you go to Starbucks and they can charge $3, $4, $5 for a cup of coffee. This is all about their brand equity. So how can market research help you determine KPIs for your brand? So there's a bunch of different ways, but we're going to highlight a few of the more common. Measuring brand awareness. So surveys and polls are really good at measuring brand awareness. You can conduct surveys within your target market to see how recognizable your brand is. And then you can also do social listening. So your social analytics are really good at providing data around your brand, but monitoring your social media mentions and online conversations can give insights into how often your brand is being talked about and really clarify that data that you're getting from your analytics. And then for assessing brand perception, focus groups and in-depth interviews, really getting to the core and finding out, right, what do people think about your brand in terms of language and words? And right, when you start creating like a marketing or advertising strategy around that, being able to have that qualitative insights into how people perceive your brand is really important to being able to inform how you move forward. And then also brand health surveys. So regularly asking consumers how they view your brand's attributes compared to competitors. This could help you identify, right, how your brand perception is either advancing or not advancing and indicate, different fluctuations in your market. Market research can also help you evaluate customer loyalty. So the most frequently used is the Net Promoter Score. This metric measures the likelihood of your customers recommending your brand to others. A high NPS indicates strong customer loyalty driven by good brand positioning. There's also retention rate analysis, where you use purchase data to analyze the rate at which your customers return to buy from your brand again. High retention indicates strong loyalty. So David's going to talk a little bit about NPS and how maybe that's not, maybe not the best, could be just fine, but there are other things that you can take a look at to understand your customer loyalty in terms of market research.
Well, sure. Thank you. When you look at NPS, and it's basically a question with I think, Angela, 11-point scale. So oftentimes people get that wrong. But it's the NPS, Net Promoter Score, is useful when you want to, put your finger in the air and see what condition our condition is in. It'll tell you that, but that's about it. It's not going to give you any information related to the weather other than, it feels warm or it feels cold. But what we like to do is, in addition to NPS, we like to add index questions so that we can tie NPS to things like purchase intent or, consideration set types of questions. So yeah, is NPS useful? Sure. It's generally useful to senior executives who just want to know what that is. But we recommend much more than that.
Excellent.
And I would add, it's not just asking the simple 11-point question, that a real NPS has to be integrated throughout the organization, through the CRM system with follow-up and where is their disappointment, lack of. So it's not as simple as like, like you said, putting your finger up in the air, seeing where the wind's blowing, but it has to be really integrated. It's a big endeavor. And there's companies, quite frankly, that's just what they specialize in, and integrating that. But it's, you can do it. You can ask it, indexed way that you described, David, but real NPS is enterprise wide.
Yeah, it's a very systematic approach that few companies do, but almost all companies will ask this one question.
Yeah.
Excellent. So you can also use market research to track market share. And you can do this through competitive analysis, which is researching your competitors and tracking their market share versus yours. And it can be done through industry reports or third-party data sources. You can also do sales data analysis, and this is where you review your brand sales and compare them to industry benchmarks to determine how your market share is trending. And then you can also use market research to measure brand equity. So you can do this through consumer surveys, ask your audience about their willingness to pay a premium for your brand, how they value it compared to other competitors. And there's also brand valuation studies, engaging in research that tracks the financial value attributed to your brand based on customer loyalty, perception, and market share. So you can see that market research really can give you a lot of insights into how your brand is performing, and help you create, a really great roadmap on how to, improve it or pivot. So by monitoring these KPIs through market research over time, you can get a deeper understanding of how your brand is positioned, determine trends, and identify opportunities to gain or retain market share. So let's look at a simple, actionable process to test and refine your brand positioning based on the insights you gather. So first is to establish a baseline. The first step in understanding your brand positioning is to partner with an expert to conduct research. By gathering data through surveys, focus groups, and competitive research, this will help you determine what your current positioning is, right? Where are you starting from? And inform brand strategy that you can use to gain market share. You can even use this data to determine how you introduce new products, develop product extensions, set goals, and raise funds.
Now, this is
Next
something that, I'm sorry, Ashley, but
no, go ahead, David.
This is something that that we've been doing. It's a core competency of ours, is to do these pre and post tracking studies to measure a variety of things: brand equity, awareness, familiarity, purchase, and all this stuff. Angela is the one that handles all that. But the idea here is that if you're going to spend money on a campaign or a product introduction or whatever, wouldn't you want to know how effective your spend is? And this is a way to do it. And so we can do a pre-survey before a launch and measure people's opinions. And then after the launch is done, we go back into the marketplace and we see how, if at all, the needle is moved as a result of this new communication. And it's very, very powerful to determine if your spend is A, working, and B, if it's not, why not? Because we can fine tune things like positioning statements. We can understand the, subtle, nuanced feedback that this really isn't working. And so if you're going to spend, I don't know, millions of dollars, we recommend that companies earmark between 1% and 5% of their overall campaign spend to actually measure their efforts.
Excellent. And really provides insurance, right, for the campaign.
It's exactly right. I often tell people we're like an insurance company, and you either pay us now or you pay us later, because when you go out into the market without research and the wheels fall off the wagon, man, that gets super expensive, right? Mm-hmm. And now you're left with a whole host of other problems.
Excellent. So step 2 is to set the goalpost. Once you've gathered the data, sift through the results, look for patterns, inconsistencies, and unexpected findings. Use the information to identify possible reasons for these results. Shifts in the economy, new competitors, environmental changes, changes in technology, shifts in strategy and personnel can all cause fluctuation in how your brand performs in the marketplace. Use these inferences to identify areas you'd like to improve your brand positioning or gather more data, and allow that to drive your goals for the year. And step 3 again is to get scientific, right? Again, we can't really reinforce enough how market research provides that data that you can leverage to drive all of your communications processes. You're going to want to, again, build an objective, determine your hypothesis, have what you observed about your target audience and what they care about, and what are you setting out to prove with this study? Creating an objective and a hypothesis for the market research study will ensure your outcome creates the clarity you and your audience are looking for. Step 4 is test the new positioning. So with the help of an expert, you don't have to wait until you've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to know whether your new campaign will deliver results. And David talked about this before, but you can actually launch A/B tests on marketing materials, website messaging, and social media ads prior to a campaign launch to see how the refined positioning performs. During this step, you can also gather feedback from your audience through additional surveys or customer interviews.
Yeah, let me take a moment to explain A/B testing, because you hear it a lot. You hear it a lot in medical jargon, and you hear it a lot in marketing research. Essentially, A/B testing is, if, let's say, we're testing an ad, currently in the marketplace, there's an ad that's already running. That would be the control. And all the new ads you want to test and look at, those would be the test items that you want to measure against the control. So that's one form of A/B testing. And of course, oftentimes we just pit several concepts together and determine which one people like. But the point is that if done right, it's extremely powerful, and it really helps in making classic missteps about not anticipating what your customers really need, and basically giving them a product that doesn't really solve a problem.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then step 5 is to measure and iterate. So when you work market research into your processes, you can measure your audience feedback, you can measure your growth in the marketplace, and the ability to iterate on research that you've already done and track over time really gives you a lot of information about your brand. So after the campaign has run, and we recommend waiting about 6 months, track the same KPIs, brand awareness, perception, loyalty, market share, and brand equity over time to see if the new positioning is making an impact. It's important to maintain the same controls to ensure the only possible change in positioning is the campaign itself. Once you've gathered the results, repeat the process to determine trends. Okay, so thank you for joining today's webinar, Data-Driven Design, How to Use Market Research to Boost Your Brand. We've covered a lot about how market research can fuel your brand positioning and thought leadership, but now it's time to take those insights and put them into action. As C-suite professionals, you're in the unique position to drive the narrative in your industry, whether it's creating compelling content or finding your brand's positioning. The key is to continuously test, measure, and evolve. Market research is your secret weapon to stay ahead of the competition and craft a brand that is deeply resonant. So, are you ready to stop guessing and start growing? Here are a few ways you can get started today. First is to conduct a brand audit. Begin by assessing where your brand stands today. Use the KPIs we discussed. brand awareness, perception, customer loyalty, market share, and brand equity to get a clear picture of how your audience sees you right now. You can also use it to create data-driven content, like our clients that we discussed with you. Use primary and secondary research tools to gather fresh insights, surveys, interviews, focus groups, and competitor analysis that will give you the data you need to create relevant and accurate thought leadership content. And then finally, make data part of the process. Brand positioning and thought leadership aren't one-time efforts. Create a cycle of continuous evolution and refinement to maintain your position in the marketplace. Test new messaging, monitor how the market responds, and adjust your strategy accordingly to stay relevant and impactful. Okay, so that's the end of our presentation, and we'd love to open it up to you for some Q&A.
Sure, we're happy to stay and answer any questions.
Fantastic. Do you have any questions for Angela, David, Ashley? And if not, I'm happy to answer some questions too. Comments are welcome as well. And if there aren't any questions, we have a unique offer for you today. Earlier, I had mentioned that David just wrapped up the publication of his new book, Backbone, and we are offering it to you. So when we send this out as a follow-up, we will link it so that you can request your very own copy. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you. We hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.